Good morning, boys and girls. Today I have the pleasure of introducing a book I found on my bookshelf that is really special. It's an introduction to Tantra in a book that's just called How to Meditate by Kathleen McDonald. Here's two versions of it. And the interesting thing about this book is that it's an introduction to Tibetan Tantra written in a practical way, whereas just about anybody could be introduced into some of the core practices of that tradition. Now, I'm not sure, she looks like she's a monk, and so that's probably how she got this information, but it was very, very unusual at the time to find a book like this, and it's very, very valuable, especially in the beginning. It was first published in 1984, and it talks about why meditate, what is meditation, establishing a meditation practice, meditations on the mind, analytical meditations, visualization meditations, devotional practices, and phonetics of prayers in Tibetan, and suggested other reading. I really recommend this book to anybody who's at all interested. It's very practical. It's very brief. I think it's available, and very, very useful. At least I found it to be very, very useful. So that's the intro book for today. Anyway, and let's get going. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Excuse me one second. We got a little problem here. Just one moment. I think it's on my end.
Battery 50%.
There we go.
Connected to David's iPad.
All right, let's try it again.
Can you 1 to 4?
Why is it not coming through? One more time.
1 to 4. Can you hear me?
All right, let me just see. One more. We're gonna give it one more try. Now it says it's connected, so wait a minute. Try it again.
1 to 4. Can you hear me?
Battery 50%.
Now try.
Is it coming through now?
No, it's not. Can you speak a little bit louder? No, what? It says it's connected, but for some reason it's not cooperating.
1 to.
That's all right. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I see it may be going to another device
1, 2, 3.
elsewhere in the house. Just a second. Okay.
David's iPad.
Yeah.
Disconnected. Ready to connect.
Let's see now.
1,
Sorry,
2,
folks.
3.
No, that's okay. I'll tell you when to talk.
Connected to David's iPad.
All right. Now let's try it, and then
1, 2, 3.
there we go. Finally, three's the charm. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, give me a moment here. All right, now we can continue. Sorry for the technical difficulties. All right. So what have you learned?
Yeah. So I have learned that if I have to do something, waiting for mental preparation, so like waiting for things to be perfect before doing it is leads to a lot of waste of time.
It's a fool's errand, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of waiting for ideal conditions or ideal mental preparation, I should start as soon as possible.
That,
And
you know,
because
go ahead.
yeah, because even with doing anything, I will learn new things along the way, and that will just take even more time.
It's especially true for meditation, by the way.
Mm.
I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but if you wait for there to be no sound and for everything to be quiet and everything to be perfect, you'll waste a lot of time. But good, yeah. Conditions. Nothing on this earth is perfect. There's a Sufi story about a man who asked a Sufi for a celestial apple, and the Sufi produced one for him. And the man took the apple, and it was indeed very, very beautiful. But as he was rotating it in his hand, he said there was a wait a minute, there's a wormhole. There's a worm in this thing. To which the Sufi replied, you asked for a celestial apple. That is one. Anything that partakes of this earth, anything introduced to this earth, also partakes of its imperfection. And so you can have, the perfection is not something that we're given on this earth. So that's the message, and it's an important message, because if you're looking for perfection, you're on the wrong planet or in the wrong universe. Haha. Ain't no perfection here. So good. Good point. Questions?
Also, I think yeah, so like there was also a very big misunderstanding of thinking that I have a lot of time. So
Okay,
I thought,
good.
okay, I have got,
If
so
you
I
have
can
it, other
wait.
people have it. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that also, because time flies by so fast that if I keep on waiting, then the mind just keeps on procrastinating and procrastinating. So, and yeah, I don't have enough time
Not
to
on this
wait.
earth.
And
Not on this earth. Good. A good practical point.
so yeah, those were the two things
Okay.
I definitely love this week.
Excellent. You can carry those forward with you. Now, any questions?
I had a question on the devotional practices that you just mentioned.
Okay.
From the book. So the question is not from the book, but based on like the devotional stuff I used to do before.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I used to do like a bhajan or like a name chanting, I will I will feel emotional when doing that. Uh, and But the practice of meditation is very different, where I don't feel emotional. So like when I focus on the breath or when I focus on like turning the light around. So these two seem very different.
They are different. Devotional practices can be very, very powerful, and for some people, they last a lifetime. For others, they replace the emotional with something more refined, less less physical. Emotion is very physical. You know, your amygdala in here gets involved. You know, and presumably the frontal cortex stimulates the amygdala. Then there's the emotion that washes over the entire body, and there's all kinds of neurochemicals and all kinds of things like that involved. And so, it's a powerful practice, and it's some people use it exclusively. God bless them. Others, they realize that usually that emotion is a relatively coarse environment in the mind and in the brain compared to the refinements, the refined nature of other insights that don't include emotion. And in this work, what we're trying to do is to get to the very, very most refined, so as that opens you up to impulses from the outside. And so that's less likely to occur if you're highly emotional. It's very, very strange, but true. And so people come to spiritual practice and understandably thinking that, okay, what I need to get as emotional as possible, because that's what's preached in many churches and in every denomination, Sufi, Christian, Jewish, all of them. And sometimes they'll use music and emblems and all kinds of rituals to get the emotion heightened. And it's true that at a heightened emotion, you're more likely to recall something, but you're also more susceptible to indoctrination or conditioning. And these facts are used by churches sometimes for that reason. And plus it feels good. And plus it can be cathartic. And so I'm walking a very fine line here because I'm not trying to denigrate or minimize or dismiss emotional practices. What I want to make clear is that in this endeavor, emotion is seen as a more crude mental state compared to other states that come beyond that, I guess I should say. Any questions about that?
So even the emotion of looking up to God, or like even the emotion of feeling like that I am dependent on God, that is also cause emotion.
Well, see,
right?
First you talk about looking up to God. I was reading the Gospel of St. Thomas last night. There's a passage where Jesus says, "Where is heaven?" or something like that. Is it in the sky? If it's in the sky, then the birds precede you. And then he says, is it in the sea? And he says, if it's in the sea, then the fish precede you. And then he goes on to say, the kingdom of heaven is within you, which he also says in the other gospels as well, the mainstream gospels. By the way, I want to recommend the Book of Thomas to some people. Apparently it was first written in Greek, I'm not sure, and they found the Coptic version in 1945. Which is kind of strange. It'd be that late, but they found it in 1945, and it's part of a larger trove of Christian manuscripts from about around the 1st century. Very, very interesting, and parts of it are completely in concordance with what we're doing here. The kingdom of heaven is within you. He also says the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's also without you. I mean, outside of you. And then resolving that is the mystic, part of the mystic quest. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Follow-up questions? I hope I did a decent job of articulating that. There's nothing, I often prescribe devotional practices to some people. But in your case, and in the case of most, intermediate students, it's not necessarily to be avoided, but its usefulness is limited. Although for waking up, frankly, it's pretty powerful stuff. So I shouldn't. Let me emphasize that part. In terms of waking up, in terms of getting the energy and the mobility, the power behind you, there's nothing wrong with using emotion in the beginning to wake up, or to get you motivated to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
But waking up is not an emotional process. It's not even a neurological process. It's not even related to the brain particularly. The brain is just something that observes, perceives and does brain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people have difficulty calling it an experience, because it's not an experience like other experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's not too confusing for folks. Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question on that.
Good.
Regarding surrendering practice. So So far, I have done two kinds of surrendering practice. One is when I used to think of like a god figure, so like Krishna or Rama, and then I will surrender to that, and that will feel good because I have like a mental image of something that is easy to surrender to. And then the other one where I used to think universe like as a god, like including me, like everything is a god. There's an essence to everything, and I will surrender to that. But even with that, I will get a similar kind of feeling, or that I have like some higher power now, not a figurehead, but now like an essence that I'm surrendering to. Are both the same thing?
I'd say pretty much, and it's not unusual to find very advanced mystics, of accomplishment, praying to God or praying to a higher power or whatever, because our brains can't handle it. It's too extraordinary and too diffuse, and because God is everything and God is love, or truth is everything and reality is everything and God is everything, it's hard for our monkey brains, and in our human brains I should say, to grok that. And it's easier to have, we may get disconnected because of some problems here, and if we do, I'll call you back. So it's just easier for the mind and the brain to grok a figure of God or an essence of a figure. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the Buddha is for, right? That's what the Buddhas are for, literally, to help the human mind take the next step, to get beyond our subject object, our crude looking at everything as a thing or a personage.
Mhm.
So follow up on that. That's a good observation, and very important for folks. So there's nothing wrong with it, and there's a lot right with it, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think then I do want to ask about prayer. Like, what is an effective way to pray? Uh,
Everything depends. Prayer changes you. Effective prayer should change you as much as it changes anything. Angels are a word for the hidden faculties of mind, but see, mind is everything that is. And again, I hate to keep bringing it up, or maybe I don't hate to keep bringing it up, but this is where this is very, very useful. The Avatamsaka, the flower ornament scripture, translated into English, I don't know, probably 50 years ago for the first time. And the reason it's that because it teaches your mind how to do this, exactly what you're talking about. So the Buddhas are everywhere. The Buddha is a singular essence, but the Buddha is the cosmic essence, and the Buddha is the cosmos, period. Right? So it's very, very hard for the brain, the unprepared brain, to grok all this. But when you do, this text helps one do that. And by the way, I'm very happy to say that we have another reading from the Avatamsaka, from the realm of reality. It's partial though, but it can still do the job. So you sit down and listen to this reading, which is on YouTube as of yesterday. And there's others too that are equally useful, but this one's particularly nice for inducing a change in your consciousness. So in the beginning, when you hear it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what is this? This is just like repetitious, or this is just like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm not learning anything. I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not doing anything. But then as you let it wash over you, and as you let the imagery flash through your mind, right? Because you're listening now, you're not necessarily reading. Although you should do it when you're reading too. There's a gradual and subtle change in consciousness, and maybe not so subtle. Once you're used to it, it's not so subtle at all. It's very unsubtle. And so I'd recommend that to people. It's the first book of or I think it's the intro to the realm of reality. entry, and the name of the book is Entry into the Realm of Reality. And it's very peculiar. At first, it seems awkward and just, why are they doing this? This is stupid. But give it a chance, and through chanting this sutra, its effects are certain once your mind is prepared, and it will help prepare your mind. So again, I'm recommending that. Maybe we'll get a chance to read some, but I don't know. My battery's running out. Uh-oh. For some reason, it wasn't plugged in. But go ahead. And I can't charge it while I'm doing this, so
Okay.
don't be alarmed.
I have one more question.
Okay.
That is from a Krishnamurti video I saw recently.
Good.
So
Was it a Matrix of
in
Mind
that-
video? Was it a Matrix of Mind video?
no,
Perchance?
not from that one.
Okay.
No, not from that.
All
But
right.
I have watched those too.
Good. And there's also
Yeah,
rare footage, live footage, live, recordings of Nisargadatta, which those are very, very hard to come by. Because there were no like video cameras in the same sense as we have them now, back in the 70s and 80s. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so in this video, someone asked Krishnamurti if he had any divine experiences or like those so-called spiritual experiences, and how he can have that. So he went on to first he acknowledged that he has had that, and then he went on to say that he basically explained the process on how to get there, and then eventually what he says was that as long as you are, first of all, there should be no seeking, because if you are seeking, then you are not there. And then secondly, your mind should be so, what do you call, like all these defilements, like desire, fear, all these things should be washed out. And once a mind is prepared like that, then something can happen, and then God seeks you out, and you don't need to seek
Well, God is seeking you all the time. The universe is conspiring, literally conspiring to bring you home. God is literally searching. It's a good way to put it, for you. All right. So now what you laid out two different major points, but before we get to that, I want to say that Krishnamurti oftentimes reverses, or doesn't reverses. He equates cause and effect, and that's the way most people think. So let's go through it again, and remember that sometimes Krishnamurti, who I think he woke up at like, was he 40? Maybe mid-30s, maybe 40 or something like that. And he was a solitary man, and he did this for a living, and he taught for a living of sorts. I mean, he was supported, so he didn't have a job, he didn't have to deal with money, and so he just hung out among the pines in Ojai, California, and elsewhere. The point is that he didn't take on individual students, and if he did, it would be somebody like David Bohm, and it would. I think the best thing to do is just read everything he's written and listen to as many of his videotapes as possible, and then you'll get a sense of it, as long as you have a grounding in other traditions. But go ahead. There were two parts.
Yeah, there were two parts. Yeah, the first part was where he said that the mind needs to get clear of all the defilements, like in a perfectionist kind of way. So where there are like no desires, no fears, like mind is not entangled with anything. And once mind becomes clear like that, then only like something can happen. And
Okay,
then
so let me speak to that. All right, before I lose it. So again, he's describing the state. Right, in the state of awakening, there is no entanglement with the mind. I mean, the mind is just there, and it's a little bit annoying, and it's the opposite direction of the state. So he's describing it as if you were going to get to perfection before you wake up. But if, like we said at the beginning of this session, Perfection is not something you find in this world. Not in this world, right? And so I think he overstates it, because if all the mystics in history had to be perfect before they awakened, then we wouldn't have any awakened mystics, because humans aren't perfect, right? That's a truth, right? Unless you can find, I mean, there are perfected men. I mean, Jesus was a perfected man, pretty much, but he, very, very rare. Now, so again, he describes as the means, he describes the results as the means. And there's a lot of truth in what he says, but it's not absolute the way he's putting it, is my critique of that, for what it's worth. Okay? So now what's the second part? So again, cause and effect. Now, in reality, cause and effect are totally interdependent and intertwined. And you'll realize that later, but it's a difficult realization that there is no causation on this planet. I mean, we're really wedded to that. And it's hard for the brain to think of something without a cause. But that, what is God? What is truth? What is reality but something without a cause? What is light? What causes light? Light causes itself. We can go and we can pick apart, hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, but the reality is a photon of light is, as far as I know, it's permanent. It travels at the speed of light. Where do they go when they hit the edge of the universe? So I can understand how it can be confusing. Go ahead. Second part.
Yeah, the second part was where he said that once there is no seeking, once seeking is like cleared out from the mind.
Okay,
Then,
let's stop right there, because these are complex things. Seeking is the purification of the mind, getting rid of random, totally arbitrary and not useful desires and thoughts and concepts and attachment to, your car, to your house or whatever. So seeking is the same thing as purifying the mind. That's what seeking is. So what he's saying now kind of loosely contradicts what he said at first, right? Because how do you get to the point to where you don't have any of these defilements, these obscurations, these impediments? How do you get to that without seeking, would be my question. Can you do that? So keep going.
yeah, I think at least for me, I don't see a way to get there without seeking.
Exactly. And so you got to remember, Krishnamurti is speaking for the ages. Krishnamurti, for those, is speaking to highly advanced students, right? But he didn't have highly advanced students, so he's just speaking into the ethers. And God bless him. I mean, that's very important what he's done, or what he's, and what he's. But it's also difficult to, or if not impossible, to parse out in reality. In practical reality, I should say, for most of us.
I think I have one more question on that.
Okay, good. Questions on Krishnamurti are always great.
So
Because he's
he
always speaking
always
to the
talks
heart of
about,
the matter. Go ahead. And I admire him and am grateful to him. Go ahead.
yeah, he always talks about the practice of like he says that you can get there immediately, and he says you just stop your mind and just like watch everything very intently, and then you will be there. But for me, that is also a seeking.
It is a seeking,
That
and and people need to try it and see how far they get. I guess that's the best advice. Try it, see how far you get. But you do try. You have to try to cleanse your mind, to purify your desires. But mainly it's attachments, and also attachments. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say mainly. Attachment to concepts, attachment to objects, attachment to people. And so Krishnamurti could speak this way, but he had no family. His brother died. He was taken away from his parents. He grew up, as a well-off Britisher, and it shows. And he never had to work and never had to deal with the world. And so we can forgive him quite a bit of this. But I agree with you, that is seeking. And so what ultimately, though, when you get to the final stages of waking up, and then when you do wake up, you realize that waking up was through no effort of yours. It's something that has come to you, that's been there the whole time. And it was just your stupidity that stood in the way. So the eternal essence is inside you. You're made of it, and it's outside you. It's all there is. It's like being a fish and realizing one day, hey, there's water, and I'm made of it. Do you see what I'm saying? And not only am I made of it, but everything is made of it. I mean, that's a crude analogy, but it's something like that. Okay, sir? We could go on and on with that. Let's move on to the next question.
The next one is, I wanted to talk a little bit about like seeing a tree. I think that we also talk about a lot, and I have heard Krishnamurti also talk about that a lot. So like whenever, let's say I'm out walking, and what I've seen that if I start looking at an object like tree or a road or whatever, as my mind settles down and calms down, that scene becomes more lively.
Yeah, you see a fellow creature. But let's go back to trees, but there's something I left out of the whole thing, which was the sincerity is what counts. No matter what practice, no matter what you're doing, the sincerity, the integrity, the wholeheartedness, that's what truth looks for, demands, in fact. And so if you're at all ambivalent or all, kind of like wishy-washy or whatever, then truth will stay behind the door, right? But if you knock, it'll be opened, right? As Jesus put it. So, okay, I just wanted to add that part about, because without sincerity, none of these practices, without wholeheartedness, without your whole heart, mind, body, and soul being engaged, you're not going to get very far in this work. Okay, so now let's go back to I'm sorry, I just had to put that in. So looking at a tree, the more awake you are, the more lively, the more chances you could see our fellow creatures, with accurately. And it engenders a feeling of love. Yeah, we're not alone. I mean, you feel that towards all God's creatures. And so God is the tree as much as God is, more so than God is some abstract figure that we managed to put in the sky. Is that making sense? But your point, I think, tell us more. So you say it's more lively.
So I have seen that if I look at like a tree or an object, then it becomes more lively. But if I look at a person, then I start getting that feeling of like love kind of attachment kind of thing with the human. So the experience seems different with people versus like tree or something that I consider like non-living.
It is different, right? They think at a different rate. They have different personalities, and we don't have any. You'll start to feel and sense the personalities of trees, but they're living creatures, and you don't worry. It's a matter of cultivation. You'll start to see that we share this planet with other beings. We're always looking for aliens in outer space. We don't even recognize our fellow travelers. In the ocean and on the land and in the sky. So I hope that's not premature, but eventually I think you'll grok it. Just keep going, again, with sincerity.
Got it. I think then I do want to ask about the difference or how to transition from desperation to sincerity. So,
Desperation can breed sincerity sometimes. I mean, with David Hawkins, the psychiatrist we talked about, last session, he was desperate and he found God. Eckhart Tolle was desperate and he found God. Well, desperation is a form of sincerity if it's real desperation. So, but go ahead. What was your question?
yeah, because so when I have felt desperate, then it's a very heightened emotional state, and I can see that my mind is not stable. So like my mind is kind of plunged and very desperate for something. Um, but when I go the other
It's
way,
desperate for
when I'm more
peace.
relaxed,
It's desperate for peace. It's desperate for God. It's desperate for truth. The peace that passeth understanding. That's what we're all looking for. We're all looking for that which is inside us, outside us, and everywhere we look. It's like, it's in a way it's kind of funny. But that's what desperation is, right? Now it may manifest itself, desperate about something else. But I hope I didn't imply that emotion was a absolute obstacle. I'm just saying that emotion is not the highest level of human experience by a long shot, right? And then on the journey, emotion is superseded by more refined states of consciousness. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But go ahead.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
desperation usually leads to prayer. I mean, even among atheists,
Hmm.
right? Even atheists start to pray if they're really desperate. So there's part of us that longs for truth, and in some of us it's stronger than in others, right?
Hmm.
But it's only with that longing, which is kind of an emotion, do most people get anywhere. So I wouldn't be too concerned. And the other thing about
But
desperation is you're desperate because your mind has no solution. Your mind has no solution, and no other mind has a solution. It's not a mental problem.
mm,
I would say, in my experience, there's a lot less. There's a lot. Desperation is not necessarily ill fortune.
mhm.
Desperation is like things are being shown to you, but the mind is so obstinate it won't receive it. So for all you desperate folks out there, keep the faith. It's often a step to something deeper, richer, infinitely more rewarding. Okay, sir? Would you want to say anything else about desperation?
Yeah, so I have seen myself going through these cycles where something happens in life, and that makes me desperate to awaken or to get to the truth and things like that. And then with time, somehow mind relaxes automatically, but then it starts relaxing too much, and then something happens that again triggers the cycle of desperation. But overall, there's progress between these cycles, but these cycles keep on happening, and
The ego
I was thinking
protects
how,
itself. The ego protects itself, right?
yeah. So I was wondering how can I stop these cycles and just go to
Why do you
sincerity
want to
that is
stop them?
lasting?
Why do you want to stop them? And
Because
could
of
you stop them?
desperation.
I mean, first of all, I don't know if you could. Jesus was desperate in the garden. I mean, I don't. That's not really desperate, but it's something. I'm not a theologian or anything like that. But I think there were times when Jesus prayed for help. Jesus was desperate on the cross too. Father, why hast thou forgiven me? At least according to some traditions, right? So desperation is a part of the human condition. And I'm not sure, and oftentimes it leads to a deeper understanding of the human condition, which can be nothing but good for the spiritual quest because we're interested in reality. So the mind may tie itself in knots and you feel the desperation, but the mind never relaxes the knot, it's time usually, right? Or another, kicking it up to another level. You can't solve the problem. Okay, here it goes. You can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. And so what happens is that if we do survive the problem, which is sometimes it feels like we're not going to, you've kicked up to another level of consciousness or another level of abstraction. I mean, this applies for everything: physics, engineering, all kinds of philosophical problems, so on and so forth, social problems. You can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. You have to go up a level, right? And so I would say the same thing applies. I'm making generalities. I'm not recommending desperation. What I'm saying is that desperation often leads to the next step. I mean, many alcoholics describe desperation as the thing that saved them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be too keen. Now, plus, you can't prevent it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, sir?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. Be afraid of ignorance, laziness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. The next one is, I don't really have as such a question from Avatamsaka, but I've been reading it, and based on our last discussion last week, I have relaxed into the idea of just reading the book and just waiting it out, and then rather than worrying about I'm not learning or I don't know what is going on, things like that, I just given myself time to, okay, let's just first do this and then see what happens.
Very good. An analogy just popped into my mind. It'd be like going into surgery and asking the surgeon, okay, is it working? Is it working? He's just started the procedure, right? And you're asking him, well, is it working? This didn't work. As a matter of fact, I'm bleeding more than when you started. So this doesn't work. It just doesn't. It's nonsensical, right? So good.
Yeah.
Just chant it, read it out loud, silently. It doesn't matter. Just get familiar with it, and it will help your mind evolve. Okay, good.
Another thing I have noticed is that earlier, when I was reading the book, I was stressing a lot on having the visual and stuff, and now I do not stress on that. So now what happens is that as I read the paragraphs, a certain, not exactly a visual, but more like an intuition kind of feeling.
Good. It's speaking to recondite parts of the brain in manners that you don't have any idea of. If you listen to the reading that was done yesterday for the intro to Realm of Reality, the last book in the sutra, you'll find that it doesn't, and the imagery is passing by so fast, right? But it's having an overall effect, and things are being repeated, and things are being stated from another angle, and they're stated in a different modality. Like it may be visual, but then it becomes sonar, then it becomes a fragrance, and all of these things they work, in ways that you can't dissect in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like studying biochemistry. In the beginning, you go, what the hell is this? Why do we have to learn? First you had to do organic chemistry. You go, why the hell did I have to memorize this stuff? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, what is this? But then later you realize that, this was necessary for me to understand biochemistry. I needed organic chemistry. And to understand organic chemistry, I need basic chemistry. Right? And then you can go on to immunology or membrane physiology or whatever you want. But there was an order to it, and there was a logic to it. And it's been tested over, with biochemistry, it's been, 100 years. This stuff, it's been thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So, good.
So now what happens that when I read a phrase like oceans of worlds or oceans of jewels, 9 Buddha fields, then suddenly some vague thing arises that is shining or like huge, but then mind quickly passes through it and moves on to the next thing. So there's no holding on to or getting the visual
Right.
that detailed, but just
And then you'll see the same type of passage will then move to the north, to the south, to the nadir, to the apex, right? And then there'll
yeah.
be clouds of something else, or oceans of atoms, the atoms of an ocean of worlds, the number. So the numbers are really, really stretching the mind, but gradually you start to get comfortable with them. And there's only so far the human mind can go anyway. Our universe, I mean, that's even that is a hard thing for the mind to grok. 13.5 billion light years. And then some light shined from a star 13 billion years ago. And that light supposedly is just hitting us, but after it hits us, where does it go? Because as far as we know, protons are not destroyed in our current science, right? They're neither created nor destroyed, photons. And so, it's just things like that. The light, where did light come from? And then you're not going to understand that in a year. You could spend a lifetime on that. What is light, really? And what happens to light? I mean, to photons. You could spend a lifetime on that. But don't worry, they dose it properly. It can seem difficult at times. That's true, but this quest is difficult for most people.
So can you repeat that? I lost you there for a second.
The sutra may seem difficult, but this quest is difficult for some people. And I speak from authority because I was one of those people, huh? I mean, Krishnamurti had to lose his brother. Ramana Maharshi, he lost someone too. And it collapsed his ego, and then boom, there he is. Because he was prepared. All right, sir, we may make it without the phone dying. Go ahead.
I just have one more question.
Okay.
So with the other practice that I used to do, where I will look up like at the corner of my roof, at my roof, and see myself or things like that.
Right.
The same thing
from that vantage point.
That
network of loci practice, where you look at the same thing, but you imagine seeing it from another angle or a different distance. Very good practice. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then there also the same thing has started happening, that I get an intuition kind of visual, and then and that's it, like not the coarse or very refined thing I used to focus myself on in the past.
Just a general kind of sense. Yeah, so the flower ornament, which is holographic, which is pretty extraordinary considering it was done in the first, second centuries. And it's also fractal. So each portion of it contains the whole, and the whole contains each portion as a network of loci, right? It literally illustrates what it's trying to invoke, right? So you're on the right track, see, because you just persevere, even though it's difficult at first, and you were doing it, in a crude way, a relatively crude way, the network of loci practice. Gradually you learn, and then it becomes more subtle, and then you realize it's not a problem at all. You just need to lighten up a bit, right? And so and it's all like that. You just keep going. Right? You persevere. Mm-hmm. All right, sir? Anything else before we stop?
No, that was it.
Vaya con Dios, compadre. All right? And keep it up. See you later. Ciao.
Thank you.